Hello ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about EverQuest Next. Now I am a massive EverQuest fan. I've played EQ Live, so the first one. I've played EverQuest 2 for about 3 years, solidly, in a high-end raid guild. The guild was called Defiant, if anybody knows about that. Big EU guild, we were massive. We did loads of damage, it was amazing. So I love EverQuest. So, you know, I was expecting a lot from the EQ Next reveal. And what I want to do with this video is kind of go into detail on what the features they've announced and kind of what that means. Because I think, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at the first, now this is if they can deliver, we are looking at the first truly next-gen MMO. This is something which is completely different to what's available on the market at the moment. Okay, so let's talk about EQ Next. Well, it's got a brand new graphics engine. It's got day and night cycles. So if you've played PlanetSide 2, you will see how the game switches from day to night. It's got this fancy Forge Light engine where the lighting effects are really good. Now, I think it's safe to assume that EverQuest Next is going to feature that as well. But yeah, day and night cycles look pretty good. The world is also voxel based, so this means a shed load of destruction. This means you can smash things up. Certain abilities will actually smash bits of the environment up. Monsters will smash the environment up. Loads of stuff. It basically means dynamic environments, and that is a very big step forward in MMO design. I mean, that is, you know, no other MMO does that. It also means that there's going to be player-created content, but I'll get onto that in a minute because I've got a completely new game, if you will. It's almost like a creation sandbox, kind of like Minecraft, although way more advanced, but I'll get onto that in a mo, so just hang tight. Now, the world is also tiered. Now, this means that the zone has a overworld layer, kind of a middle layer, and then a subterranean layer. So there are examples where you can actually be fighting a specific monster, and it might smash you through the ground, and then you're fighting on the second tier of that zone, which is again something that hasn't really been done. I mean, if every zone's got 3 tiers, that just expands the, you know, the exploration. I mean, the zones, that's quite nice. I quite like that idea. So let's talk about character models and races. Now, to me, they look fairly generic. This lion thing, yeah, that looks a bit cheesy to me, and the human characters kind of look okay. I mean, it looks really similar to WildStar in its type of model design. It's kind of more of a cartoony style. It's more similar to WoW, you know, than it is to the old EverQuest games, which kind of had a more, I don't know, a considered realistic approach, if you will. Not overly cartoony as in, you know, WoW is. It's kind of going down that path. Now, is that a bad thing? I don't know. You know, I've played my fair amount of World of Warcraft to kind of be okay with that type of art design on the characters anyway. So, I don't know whether that's that much of a problem. Also, you can use SOE Mote. Now, this is a way of controlling your character's facial expressions with your webcam. Now, you can do this in EverQuest 2 at the moment, but in EverQuest Next, it will be way more advanced. Can you imagine the possibilities for machinima? This would just be ridiculous. I mean, essentially what you do is you pull a face and your character pulls the same face because it uses your webcam to detect what your face is doing and then puts it on your character. That's pretty funky, especially for machinima fans out there. I mean, I don't know whether I'd use that all that much because I'm not really that heavy into RP and all that stuff, which is roleplay. But people are, so that's pretty funky, I suppose. Another system they've got is heroic movement. Now, this is a parkour movement style system, so loads of running and jumping and double jumps and all that stuff. What do I think about this? I'm not too fussed about this again, but I do know that this system is going to be in WildStar. There seems to be quite a lot of comparisons with WildStar, and also it's going to be in, well, it's already in Guild Wars 2 because you can do the jumping puzzles, but they're aiming for like a more advanced system with EQ Next, so you can, you know, sprint faster, run up walls, jump and grab onto the ledges and double jump and all this stuff. So, you know, I guess that adds another layer to the gameplay, and I'm not kind of that fussed about that again, but, you know, it looks pretty funky. Now they're going to have a multi-class system. What this means is you will start off being able to select one of 8 classes. Then you can acquire additional classes as you play the game, and apparently there's going to be 40 more additional classes in total. Now, that's all I know, and that's all they've said, so I don't really know how that system's going to work. It sounds funky. Like most of the stuff in this little announcement video I've done so far sounds pretty funky, but how that's going to turn out, I don't know. You will also have the ability to mix and match abilities, so I guess this means you can kind of make hybrid blended classes. And also some of the abilities will actually alter the environment, like I touched on earlier, so you can actually, like, I don't know, if you had some sort of massive hammer smash, you hit the ground and the ground actually breaks or becomes deformed because of the voxel environment. There will also be class-specific weapons as well. Now, what this means is that, let's just say, I don't know, a necromancer can only use a scythe. That makes sense, that's fine. But also, it's kind of like Guild Wars 2. Now, this is where I'm a little bit worried, because if I'm honest, I wasn't really a fan of Guild Wars 2 system. It was kind of a bit restrictive in the abilities you actually could use, because I'm kind of one of these guys who wants a load of abilities on my screen. But what they're saying is that certain weapons will alter your available abilities. So if you're using a sword and shield, you would have more defensive abilities than if you were using a longsword or some sort of two-handed axe or something like that. Now, again, they haven't really touched on it that much, but that's what they've been saying, so that's all I can say on the subject. Now, another very interesting, it's not almost, this is a next-gen feature, is this idea of Emergent AI. Now, what this means is monsters or mobs will no longer have a set spawn point. So, let's take World of Warcraft as an example. You would have like a camp of, say, orcs. It would spawn orcs every now and again, and you would kill the orcs. That would be how that camp works, and the camp is going to be that since, it's just going to be the same from day one until 10 years down the line. That's not going to change unless an expansion changes it. But with EverQuest 2, what they want to do is actually produce the monsters and throw them into the world, and then let the monsters get on with whatever they want to do. So, in the example of orcs, let's say orcs like to ambush travellers or adventurers on lonely roads. So what orcs will do is find roads that are away from settlements and places and set up their own camp. Now, you go walking down a road, you find the orcs, you have a bit of a fight, maybe you need backup. So you get backup and you kill the orc camp, and now it's gone. The orcs will have to move on somewhere else, so that camp is no longer there. So what this means is you're going to be in a situation where there's zones where the experience in the zone is not going to be the same for everybody else, because spawn points are going to be effectively dynamic. They're going to be all over the map because these monsters just decide to set what they're going to do. I think I'll set my base up over there, I'll set my base up over here. And of course, orcs is only one example. There'll be loads of different mobs in the zone, so it could be really, really, really interesting, that could. And I think that's one of the next gen features. Another next gen feature is rallying calls. Now, this is kind of like a public quest. Now, you're probably saying, well, Sty, public quest, that is not a next gen feature. Well, I agree. But this is a little bit different, because this is like a public quest on steroids. So, for example, you may be called upon to construct a castle or a fort or even a city, and it might take weeks and weeks and weeks it might even take months of combined player effort, completing all kinds of quests, getting all kinds of resources and such to actually build this thing. Then, whatever you've built, be it a castle, a fort or a city, it becomes permanent in the world, and it becomes part of the game, and then it will begin to adapt and change. Now, an interesting thing about this is every server will have completely different rallying calls. Now, how different they're going to be, I don't know. But what this means is that eventually each server will be different from each other. So you haven't got, as in again the example of World of Warcraft or basically any other MMO, every server is the same. I can say to my friend who's playing on a totally different server, if you want to go to this city, it's in this zone, go there. It might be in a completely different place. It might not even be there. There might be a different city. And I think that is pretty much groundbreaking. That is kind of, each server is going to build its own unique history, and I don't think that's well, I obviously know that's not been done before, but I think if this is done well, it could actually be something pretty good. But of course, it's if it's done well. Now, and again, you can say the negatives are, well, surely they can't deviate too much, because then that would obviously be a lot of work for the devs and such, and I agree with that, but we'll have to see how that turns out. But on paper, that sounds pretty damn good. Now, as I touched on at the very start of this video, there is a kind of a mini game is not the right way to describe this. It's a different game in its own right. It's called EQ Next Landmark, and available, and apparently this will be available, I think in winter this year, so towards the end of the year. Now, what this is it's basically a massive creation sandbox. They're going to give the players the tools the devs have to basically make whatever they want. Now, it'll be a massive gigantal? I'm trying to say voxel and gigantic. It'll be a massive gigantic voxel sandbox, that's what I'm trying to say, where you can just do what the hell you like. Now, it's not connected to EQ Next, so it's not in the same world, even though it's got the same name. It's basically the Minecraft of EverQuest, where you can just go away, use their editing system, which looks absolutely insane. Like, the amount of detail looks pretty damn good, and build whatever the hell you like. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because they've said they will openly source player-created content from EQ Next landmark and add that to the actual game. So you could be in a situation where you make a castle and that castle gets put into the game, or you make some sort of scenery. And I think that's going to happen quite a lot. Pretty damn clever, because it means it reduces the load on the dev team, because they're basically outsourcing the work to the players. Also though, they have a system which is very similar to the Steam Workshop, where you can create items and sell the items for real world money. So let's say you build a drawbridge for a castle. You can then put the drawbridge on their store effectively, and people can buy the drawbridge to add to their EQ Next landmark castle. But then if they sell their castle with your drawbridge, you'll then get a percentage because it's got your drawbridge on. So again, it's very, very interesting. I really like this type of these new real money digital economies that are springing up, especially, I mean, obviously the Valve, I forgot what it's bloody called. That's at the Steam Workshop. That system's very interesting to me, and I think it's fantastic. Well, I think it's absolutely amazing that people can earn livings making digital items. It's crazy, but that's the future, and I really love that they're integrating that into EverQuest Next. They also are going to have the round table. Now this is going back to EverQuest Next. It's an open development system where players can prioritise certain aspects of development. Players apparently will also be able to see the progress of the dev team, and will be able to vote and even suggest upcoming changes to the game. Now, this system is already in place on PlanetSide 2, but it's not really that detailed. They claim the EQ Next system will be far more in depth, but again, that's all they've said. They haven't really shown anything, so it's hard to really comment on that apart from the fact we know it exists. So that's essentially all we know so far. Now, I think a very important thing is don't get overly hyped, because I've learnt my lesson over the years. Getting totally hyped about things and then not really being impressed when whatever the hell it is has come out, and it's not exactly fulfilled my amazing dreams that I've invented in my head because I've been hyped up to oblivion. So I think we all need to keep our heads here. While what they've shown does look pretty damn good, and it truly does look like a next-gen MMO because it's got new features, it's got all this player sandbox stuff, people can, edit the world, there's procedurally generated content, there's loads of stuff which is next-gen. Will they be able to deliver on this? Now, that's going to be debatable, and the only way we can obviously give an answer to that is when it's released. What kind of state will it be in? However, I'm going to use PlanetSide 2 as an example because this is the most recent Sony game, which I got really hyped for, and I even said this was my game of the year last year. So 2012, PlanetSide 2 was my game of the year. The game launched, but it was not in a launch-ready state. It was basically in a beta state, but they claimed it was launched. It had loads of problems. But not only that, now this is the really worrying thing for me. We know EQ Next is going to contain microtransactions. PlanetSide 2 contains microtransactions. However, they are horrendously expensive for what you get. They're not necessarily pay to win. Some items may be considered that, but they're not necessarily, you're not going to be in a situation where you could buy stuff and be way better than somebody else. But the sheer cost of the things is absolutely typical Sony. Well, not typical Sony, but typical SOE. So Sony Online Entertainment. So I guess you could say typical Sony, where it's really, really expensive because they kind of want to make as much as possible. So I hope they don't go down that route with EQ Next, because what they have shown me here is absolutely fucking awesome. And I'm like, this is just, I want this, and I want this now, ladies and gentlemen. So remember what I just said. Don't get overly sold on the hype, which apparently I appear to be getting sold on the goddamn hype. Good lord. So I've been Stylosa, guys, and this has been a little bit of an update as to what's going on with EQ Next. What we know so far, and a bit of a discussion. So hopefully you know what the game's all about. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like the video. If you don't, dislike the video, but please comment below because I like to see people's comments, and we can get a little debate going. I'll catch you next time, people. Toodaloo.